All right, we want to start with some breaking news. We're just learned a Massachusetts teacher was among 4 people who died in a suspected carbon monoxide incident in New Hampshire on Christmas Day. Matt Goldstein, now Brookline Public Schools, confirming his identity just a short time ago in a statement. They say Goldstein was a teacher at the Edith C. Baker School. Autopsy results and the identities of the other 3 victims have yet to be released at this point. 4 people were found dead inside this home in Wakefield, New Hampshire. Again, they were found by authorities who were actually conducting a well-being check after family members reported that they didn't show up to celebrate Christmas as scheduled. Again, a Brookline teacher among those dead after that suspected carbon monoxide incident.
Big story we are following this morning. Again, severe weather warnings across parts of the South, causing some problems during what is one of the busiest travel times of the year. Parts of Southwest Texas under a tornado watch late last night in Wharton County, just outside of Houston. Cell phone video captured one tornado there as it barreled across a farm, causing some property damage. Fortunately, so far, there have been no reports of any serious injuries. And we'll go to other parts of Texas and stretching all the way to Alabama, actually. Flash flooding and severe thunderstorms also causing issues for both those who live there and travelers as well. CBS News national reporter Katie Weiss joining us now from El Campo, Texas. And Katie, good morning. We appreciate your time. Now that the sun is up, what kind of damage are you seeing in that area this morning?
Hi, good morning, Rick. Yeah, as you showed, I'm hearing a little something there. As you just mentioned, there's been some really interesting tornado videos that were captured yesterday afternoon in this rural community southwest of Houston. And it's been pretty impressive to see what folks were experiencing then. But now this morning, we're getting a full glimpse, full understanding of the damage. Take a look from our drone camera right now live. We could show you just how powerful the tornado winds really were. This metal barn here, as you can see, was totally torn to pieces, but also the winds were so strong that they picked up the heavy metal and flew it across this field here. Pretty impressive to see just how serious and strong these storms were yesterday. We know that there are more storms coming across the southeast, so certainly something important for folks to keep in mind. This weather can change quickly and it can be very, very powerful. Rick?
All right, that's Katie Weiss reporting from Texas. Thank you. Let's turn to CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore now, who is following the latest for us. Grant, good morning. What are you watching?
Good morning, Rick. Look, we tracked at least 5 confirmed tornadoes across portions of eastern Texas yesterday into Louisiana. These are the reports of those tornadoes. At least 8 reports, but 5 confirmed so far. There's the storm system as it's moving east. This will actually regenerate some more showers and thunderstorms as we go throughout the day today. Not nearly the threat, though, for the tornadoes, much less the severe weather that we saw yesterday, though. There in parts of southern Alabama and Mississippi, we could see some stronger storms as we head through this afternoon. Now, look, that complex of storms will move east as we go through the rest of the day today. But another storm system begins to regenerate and recharge the atmosphere as we go into the day tomorrow. In places that saw the tornadoes yesterday, could see another round of severe weather as we go through tomorrow morning, with an increasing threat for more widespread showers, storms, with the threat for even stronger tornadoes than what we saw yesterday. Already for tomorrow, the Storm Prediction Center in Norman, Oklahoma, has issued an enhanced threat for severe storms there across eastern Louisiana into central Mississippi, with the notation of the possibility of a few strong tornadoes, that being of EF2 or stronger. That's the area that we'll be watching very closely as we go throughout the day on Saturday. Now, that's tomorrow. Today, the West Coast also dealing with their own form of severe weather, and that's coming from an atmospheric river that's bringing several rounds of these storm systems that have been battering the coast. Some places across the West Coast have seen wind gusts in excess of 90 miles per hour, in addition to heavy rainfall in the lower elevation. The higher elevation, the high mountain snow, they're picking up feet of snow from these multiple doses of these storm systems that will continue to batter the West Coast as we head through the weekend, even into early next week. It's a very active weather pattern across the entire country. Most of the central and eastern U.S. will get into rain today, tomorrow, into Sunday, with more rounds of storms on the way coming in from the West Coast as we head into early next week. Rick, back to you.
Yeah, coast to coast, a lot going on. Grant, thank you.
Yep.
A woman who was reported missing in Beverly has been found dead. The Essex County District Attorney says Owen Kazosi's body was discovered in Wenham Lake today. Police reported her missing in the area of J.C. Phillips Nature Preserve yesterday afternoon. Authorities believe she was walking her dog, which was found last night in Topsfield without Kazosi. The DA believes she fell into the freezing lake and couldn't get out herself. The medical examiner will determine her cause of death. District Attorney Paul Tucker says, quote, "This is not the search outcome that anyone was hoping for. We appreciate the efforts of all of our law enforcement partners who worked diligently over Christmas Eve and Christmas Day to locate Owen Kazosi. Our thoughts are with her family as they begin to cope with this painful loss."
County, a man was found dead near a smoldering car in a remote area on Christmas Eve. Early investigations revealed that an unknown man came to the victim's home and asked for some help, claiming that he was having car trouble. When the victim, now identified as Paul Clifford, didn't come home, his family reached out to police. Investigators later found Clifford dead near Reddington Pass and San Pedro River Road. The stolen car was found at an apartment near Prince Road and Roger Road. No arrests have been made.
South Korea has a new acting president today after the second presidential impeachment in recent weeks took place overnight. Lawmakers voted to impeach the then acting president, who was appointed after the elected president was impeached a little bit earlier this month. You may remember this all started back in early December when the elected president declared martial law at the time. That was forced to back down.
The nation's unhoused population has reached the double digits. This large increase is shown in data coming from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. A report shows a surge of migrants, a drop in affordable housing, and months-long rebuilding efforts after natural disasters led to an 18% increase in homelessness in the U.S. The Department of Housing and Urban Development reports more than 770,000 people were considered unhoused in January. Back in September, we reported there are more than 200 teens and young adults experiencing homelessness here in Knox County. City leaders say this number has been slowly rising within the last year. We spent the day with two men without homes here in Knox County. Right now, you can watch that story to see how they survive on the streets. Find that
Chinese workers at a construction site in Brazil for a factory owned by China's electric vehicle producer BYD are victims of human trafficking, Brazilian labor authorities said on Thursday. They also said there was forced labor at the site in Bahia state, in what is a growing controversy in BYD's biggest overseas market. Brazil's Labour Ministry released video and photos that appeared to show an overcrowded sleeping area, a bed next to a kitchen table and dirty walls. After meeting with representatives from BYD and contractor Xinjiang Group, Brazil's Labour Prosecutor's Office said that both parties had agreed to assist and house 163 workers in hotels until a deal to end their contract is reached. On Friday, China's foreign ministry said it has maintained communication with the Brazilian side to verify the situation and says it protects workers' rights and requires Chinese companies to operate in compliance with the law. BYD and Xinjiang did not immediately respond to requests for comment on Friday. However, Xinjiang rejected the Brazilian authorities' assessment on Monday that workers at the site were operating under slavery-like conditions as inaccurate. A BYD executive previously accused, quote, foreign forces and some Chinese media of deliberately smearing Chinese brands. BYD has been building the factory with an annual capacity of producing 150,000 cars in Brazil. It's part of plans to start production there in 2024 or early 2025. The factory has become a symbol of China's growing influence in Brazil, and BYD has invested $620 million to set up the Bahia factory complex alone. The investigation brings unwelcome attention to BYD when it's seeking to expand globally, having already gained dominance in China. Brazilian authorities said they would meet the companies again on January the 7th and propose a deal.
Victorian fire authorities have confirmed 8 buildings have been destroyed by bushfires raging in the Grampians, including one home and several sheds. Let's go live to Hope Wilson, who's at CFA headquarters. Hope, fireys, they're going to get a chance to assess the damage further in the coming days.
Liam, and it's going to be a really long few days ahead for those authorities and a very anxious wait for residents trying to find out exactly what happened. But this is devastating news coming in from authorities overnight that one home has been destroyed. That is in Moyston. There are around 6 sheds and other structures there in that area that have also been destroyed. There is another property in Pomona that has been destroyed too. Authorities say that is not a residential property, but they're expecting these numbers to evolve in the coming days as they're able to get into the fire zone and work out exactly what happened. But that threat, and it is still very dangerous in there, even where the fire has burnt through, there is a real risk of trees falling. Now, over the past 24 hours, there is some relief for residents in this area. All emergency warnings have been downgraded. There are now 4 watch and act warnings in place across the Grampians, so residents are still being urged to keep up to date with those warnings. Some of the locals have been able to get back into their homes, and that would be such a relief after what has been such a horrifying week. It was supposed to be a week of celebration over Christmas. Instead, residents were forced to flee their homes. Now, those emergency warnings watch and act across the place, but visitors are still being warned to stay away. And with those visitors not there, this is a major blow to the local economy. Millions of dollars not being put into that economy because this is such a popular area at this time of year. A lot of campers heading there. But for fire crews, this is now day 12 of this blaze. This fire is 75,000 hectares in size. That is around the size of Singapore. It is massive. Liam?
Just absolutely huge. A huge job for those fireys. Thank you, Hope.
It's the last week of 2024. There's barely any time left for the new year, yet somehow France managed to squeeze in another loss. Right at the end of 2024, France just lost a military base in the Central African nation of Chad. It's quite the way to end a miserable year for the country. Let's show you some scenes from Chad yesterday. French military vehicles and aircraft lining up for one last photo before driving off into the desert. The vehicles were stationed at the Faya-Largeau military base. France built this base in the 1940s. It has been central to their African strategy for 8 decades. But yesterday, France handed over the base to Chad. There were about 30 French soldiers at this base. They were the ones driving off. They're headed about 780 kilometers south to Chad's capital, N'Djamena, where they will board a flight back home. Soldiers from other bases will follow soon. There are about 100 in eastern Chad at a base in the city of Abéché. They will be the next to leave. After that, French troops stationed at N'Djamena will also depart. France had about 1,000 troops in this country, but last month Chad tore up the defense pact and gave the French 6 weeks to vacate. Chad is the latest African nation to give France the boot after Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger. The 3 West African nations kicked French troops out over the last 2 years. Military coups took place in all these 3 countries. The new military juntas decided to sever ties with France and join hands with Russia instead. Russian mercenaries replaced French soldiers in other Sahel states. Moscow is in talks with N'Djamena as well. But for now, Chad says it will handle its military affairs alone. It says it is reclaiming its sovereignty.
La décision de retrait des forces françaises est une décision.
The decision to withdraw French troops is an exclusively sovereign decision with regard to Chad. And we felt that after several decades of independence and proclamation of the Republic, it was no longer useful to have a foreign military base in our homeland.
Plus utile d'avoir une base militaire étrangère dans notre pays.
Chad is kicking France out because of sovereignty. The 3 junta-ruled Sahel states switched ties to Russia. Both resulted in the same thing, France losing its hold in Africa, and this has become a trend. 2024 was an especially bad year for France because Chad's leader actually has good ties with Paris. It isn't like the junta chiefs elsewhere. But even an ally like him decided that he had enough of the French troop presence. It's a similar situation in Senegal, another former French colony which shares decent ties with Paris, but it also wants French troops out. So what is Paris doing about all of this? How is it ensuring that it has a better 2025? President Emmanuel Macron says that he has a plan.
Nous avons voulu faire évoluer notre modèle. We wanted to further develop our model. Where we had established historical bases in many countries, we wanted to rethink our presence by co-constructing a partnership and cooperation with many countries, expression of needs, training, equipment, intelligence cooperation, one-off operations, but we are in the process of changing the logic.
Coopération en matière de renseignement, opération ponctuelle.
He says France is changing its model, changing its logic when it comes to military bases. There's one problem though. Macron said this while he was in Djibouti last week. He said this as he touted a greater role for the French base there. He wants to use it for power projection in Africa. Talk about being tone deaf. Macron also lauded shared cultural and linguistic values between France and Djibouti. You can't make this up. Here's a message for all former colonizers. The reason we have a shared language is because you colonized us, because you forced us to learn your language. We share culture because you forced it down our throats. Macron's moves show just why France is losing its grip. The African nations want sovereignty and dignity. They want France to acknowledge the past and treat them with respect. Until France does that, they will keep losing their African bases.
South Korean lawmakers, meanwhile, have voted to impeach acting President Han Duck-soo just 2 weeks after voting to impeach the country's president. 192 lawmakers voted for the measure, more than the 151 votes needed for it to succeed. Prime Minister Han took over the role after President Yoon was impeached. You'll remember that was following his failed attempt to impose martial law in the country earlier this month. The move comes after Han refused demands to complete Yoon's impeachment process.
The fight between U.S. and Mexico over genetically modified corn, known as GM corn, appears to be settled, for now at least. Last week, a panel of experts ruled that Mexico cannot ban imports of GM corn from the U.S. for human consumption. Haley Bickelhaupt explains the dispute and the ruling.
In my mind, I think it's a done deal.
Dan Keitzer, a farmer in Des Moines County, knows a lot of his grain goes to Mexico.
That is such a big deal because Mexico is our biggest trade partner.
Mexico has been importing GM corn from the U.S. for years, buying about $3 billion worth annually.
Like any business, if you lose your biggest customer, that's a big deal.
That's why he and farmer organizations were worried in 2020 when Mexico announced plans for a ban on genetically modified corn for human consumption, including a possible future ban on GM corn for livestock as well.
It's about 90% of the corn grown in the United States is genetically modified.
Kenny Hartman is a farmer in southern Illinois.
The USTR representative right away started talking to us about what we can do.
And the president of the National Corn Growers Association.
I was very frustrated because I look at it as definitely it's a trade barrier.
A trade barrier the group believes is a direct violation of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement.
Which was a great agreement.
Signed under President Trump and put into effect just 6 months before the plans for the ban.
And they basically offered no evidence that there was a human health concern,
causing trade groups to file a formal dispute.
As a farmer, we always get very frustrated in how long these things take to work through the court system.
Although white corn, which is typically used in Mexican dishes, only makes up about 1% of the U.S. corn crop, farmers believe the ruling was about the bigger picture.
To make us feel more secure that that market will stay.
If one country gets by with a trade barrier, then another country, and we've got other trade agreements that could pop up, could be the same situation.
Haley Bickelhaupt, WQAD News 8.
And both farmers tell us Mexico now has 45 days to appeal the decision, but the country has said that while it doesn't agree with the ruling, it will accept it.
In an age of rapidly advancing military technology, hypersonic missiles have emerged as a game changer. As global tensions rise from the war in Ukraine to West Asia, these weapons are proving to be indispensable in making traditional air defense systems obsolete. With their sheer velocity and unpredictability. Now our next report tells you all.
Think of hypersonic missiles as the stealth bombers of our generation. Except they're faster, more agile, and virtually impossible to stop with current technology. The ongoing wars in Ukraine and West Asia have transformed hypersonic weapons from a theoretical concern to a battlefield reality. Yemen's Houthi rebels launched a missile attack targeting central Israel. The Iran-backed group claims firing Palestine 2 missile, which breached Israel's Iron Dome, long considered the gold standard in missile defense. It is claimed that the missile flew at the speed of Mach 9, sending shockwaves through defense establishments worldwide.
The missile force, with the help of Allah Almighty, targeted a military target of the Israeli enemy in the occupied area of Jaffa using a hypersonic ballistic missile of the Palestine 2 type. The operation successfully achieved its objectives by the grace of Allah.
Russia's Oreshnik missile, screaming through the atmosphere at a speed of more than Mach 10, represents something unprecedented in military history. For the first time in warfare, such hypersonic weapons are being used regularly. The Russian president, boasting of its capabilities, challenged the West for a missile duel.
There is no chance to shoot down these missiles. Well, if those Western experts you mentioned think so, we propose them and those in the West and the United States who pay them for their analysis to conduct some kind of a technological experiment, a high-tech duel for the 21st century.
The war in Ukraine, missile strikes in West Asia, and rising tension in East Asia all point to one conclusion. Hypersonic missiles are rendering modern air defense systems almost irrelevant. In October, China tested 4th generation Dongfeng 41, its deadliest intercontinental ballistic missile. China is rapidly testing and deploying similar systems. The Americans have Trident II in their arsenal, which was first deployed in 1990. The ICBM can carry a payload of up to 2,800 kgs. Even North Korea claims to have joined the hypersonic arms race. Their Hwasong 15 has all of the continental US in its range. Apart from Oreshnik, Kinzhal and Zircon, Russia's long-range operational missile is Sarmat, which is capable of hitting targets from up to 18,000 kilometers away. India is developing BrahMos 2 in collaboration with Russia. The missile can reach speeds of Mach 8 and has a range of 600 kilometers. The key advantage of hypersonic weapons lies in their boost glide capability. They can re-enter the atmosphere quickly while maintaining guided flight. Missiles like Oreshnik and ICBMs are armed with multiple warheads, which make them even deadlier. Hypersonic missiles use aerodynamic lift to perform evasive maneuvers within the atmosphere. Striking targets with surgical precision, this leaves defense systems with mere seconds to respond. An almost impossible task. The implications are stark. Missile defense systems must be radically reimagined, and nations must prioritize investing in counter-hypersonic technologies. Hypersonics are not just the weapon of tomorrow. They are rapidly shaping the battlefield today. Ignoring them is not just strategic negligence, it's a direct invitation to vulnerability. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
And this morning, a closer look at immigration plans from the incoming administration. President-elect Donald Trump's pick for border czar is sharing new details about proposed mass deportations. It comes as there's also a growing debate over foreign workers in the U.S., specifically in the tech industry. ABC's Nicole D'Antonio has the latest from Washington. Nicole, good morning.
Good morning. There appears to be a growing rift among Republicans when it comes to work visas. Meanwhile, we're learning more about how children of undocumented immigrants could soon be deported. This morning, the man President-elect Trump tapped to be his border czar, sharing in new interviews his plans to deport undocumented families. Trump's former acting ICE director, Tom Homan, who oversaw family separations during the first Trump term, says in a series of interviews that the administration does not plan on separating families, but instead do something different.
They can be put in a halfway house, or they can stay at home and wait for the officers to get the travel arrangements and come back and get the family. You know, the best thing to do is for families to self-deport themselves.
Meanwhile, a new battle is brewing over work visas. Trump advisors Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy are facing off against another Trump ally, Laura Loomer, over support for H-1B visas for foreign workers. As of last night, President-elect Trump had yet to weigh in on the latest back and forth on H-1B visas. He has restricted them in the past. Nicole D'Antonio, ABC News, Washington.
A battle brewing across Washington and Wall Street when it comes to immigration, particularly on immigration's impact on Silicon Valley and jobs. Megan Casella joining us now with that story. Megan.
Hey, Brian, good morning. So this is a showdown between the big tech wing of Trump's Republican Party, led by Elon Musk, and the far-right MAGA wing of the party. And the debate is over H-1B visas, those ones that are reserved for highly skilled foreign workers in fields like math and engineering. And this all started with a far-right activist, Laura Loomer, criticizing a Trump appointee's stance on expanding skilled immigration. She called it alarming that career leftists, as she called them, were joining the administration with views in opposition to Trump's America First agenda. And that then started a fight with Musk, with Vivek Ramaswamy, with David Sachs, who's the incoming AI czar, all of them saying that the U.S. needs these H-1B visas and H-1B workers in order to stay competitive. They also believe that Trump is on their side in this. He said this summer that anyone who graduates from college in the U.S. should automatically get a green card to stay. Now, guys, these visas aren't a huge part of overall immigration. They're capped at $85,000 per year, but they are used primarily by tech companies. Amazon applied for more H-1B visas in 2024 than any other company. Other big names are among the top users as well. Tesla applied for 742 of these this year. You can see a couple other theirs as well. So it's a small but influential sliver of the workforce. But it's also, guys, the first time that we're seeing real division within the party on this. It's sort of Musk versus MAGA. And the question now is whether this might preview more policy fights to come between these two camps. Guys?
I don't know. I don't know how influential she is on that part of the party or that wing of the party. So is this suggesting that the immigration policies, which we expect to start day one, as promised, right, might be more nuanced?
They could be. It's going to depend on what could happen. Trump has sort of fashioned himself in the past, as those comments this summer showed, of wanting to sort of expand this skilled immigration process, of fixing the legal immigration process in addition to stopping illegal immigration. So I do think there's a way that he can try to appease everybody here by saying we're still going to continue with the mass deportations, even as we look at maybe expanding green cards and skilled visas. So that's sort of where there might be something to watch here. I wouldn't say that Laura Loomer on her own is really impactful or would make a big difference, but I do think her comment sort of ignited this debate. Suddenly there's a big wing of the party that has been loyal to Trump for years now, have been standing behind him, and are a big part of what they like is his immigration stance. So they're now saying, hey, are you going to backtrack on that? That's what they don't like to see. And there's sort of, a target now maybe on Elon Musk's back or among others who are seen as sort of newcomers to Trump's.
Vivek Ramaswamy, the man tapped by Donald Trump to lead the new Department of Government Efficiency, along with Elon Musk, is using 90s sitcoms as an analogy for why tech companies are hiring immigrant workers. In this very long post on X, Ramaswamy said, American culture celebrates mediocrity over excellence. Here are his words. A culture that venerates Corey from Boy Meets World, or Zach and Slater over Screech and Saved by the Bell, or Stefan over Steve Urkel in Family Matters will not produce the best engineers. So let's talk live to CBS News political reporter Torian Small, joining us from West Palm Beach, Florida. Really, you boil this to the bones. This speaks to giving work visas to people coming in to take these jobs into the United States. Torian, what are you hearing from West Palm Beach about how this speaks to the base of President-elect Donald Trump?
We'll read a spirited debate about my childhood favorite TV show. Certainly was on my 2024 bingo card, but at the root of this discussion, Vivek Ramaswamy is trying to make the point that American culture has really prioritized the high school jock over the nerds, which is why, in his mind, he believes these tech companies are really leaning into this H-1B visa program to bring in foreign-born talent to the U.S. in some of those top jobs like engineering, like tech, for example. We saw Elon Musk back up his Doge co-leader by saying that America has a shortage problem when it comes to these more high experience, high tech jobs. And that's why they're saying there is some merit to this program. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy has been a big opponent of this program in the past, saying that there needs to be a reform that needs to be based on meritocracy, not a lottery program. But this still did ruffle the feathers of Trump's most supportive base, that the MAGA base here. And we saw people like Laura Loomer, who traveled with the president on his private plane during the September 11th anniversary events this year, come out on Twitter and say that she disagreed with the two tech billionaires, pretty much saying that they're out of touch, and this message surely isn't one of American first. From there, we've seen it devolve into this conversation about whether or not some of the critics to Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy have been punished, their Twitter status been revoked because of that. But though at the heart of this, though, Reed, again, is a conversation about American excellence and whether or not there's space for foreign-born people in this conversation. Though, Reed, I have nothing to add to that. I will say, though, when it comes to Saved by the Bell, I love that show. Zach and AC Slater are always good in my book.
Well, you know what? I always wondered if I needed to have the highlights, like one of them. I can't remember which one it was. So, but I was more of an Urkel than either one of the guys on that show. While we have you here, a very serious topic, and that is the fact that right after Inauguration Day, President-elect Donald Trump is saying he is going to conduct the largest mass deportation in American history. There is some news today to talk about from his border czar, Mr. Homan, about how that will happen, especially as it relates to mixed status families. Walk us through that, if you will.
Well, Homan is certainly no stranger to these large-scale operations. He was a part of ICE under Obama when we saw the most deportations under a presidency in American history. I also have to mention, though, that the second largest deportation happened not under Trump, but under President Biden this year. That number is about 271 unauthorized immigrants in the fiscal year of 2024 deported by ICE under President Joe Biden. So trending upwards as President Trump looks to come into office. Homan has been mum about how much this will cost, but he's been floating the idea this could range around the $86 billion mark to partake or to take out this massive deportation operation. When it comes to funding, though, it's the power of the purse that lies within Congress. It's going to take some type of consensus there because we see just a very narrow majority in the House, and of course Republicans just don't have the number to overcome Democrats' filibuster in the Senate. So they're going to have to take concessions when it comes to Democrats on how that operation will look. Donald Trump could also exhaust a national emergency declaration like we saw him do in 2019 to be a little bit more flexible with public or with federal funding. He can move some money around from the Department of Defense like he did before in the past, but ultimately it's going to take the handwork of Congress, and as we see, it's not much that could be done very quickly on the Hill nowadays, so it's going to take quite the effort for Homan to see this out.
Well, in the meantime, this was a huge campaign promise. He ran on this, so it'll be fascinating to see if he's able to deliver in the timeline that he's promising the American people. CBS News political reporter Torian Small, always great to talk to you from West Palm Beach, Florida, or anywhere you are on the map. Torian, thanks.